Hello, BookTube. I've got a little mail for you today, including a box that I think is going to result in an unseemly amount of squealing. But before I launch into the mail, before we talk about all that, before I launch into any of my videos today, I want to mention a viewer of this channel, a viewer named Peter, who right now is going through an ordeal you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. I want to give a shout out to him and thank him for watching my videos, but I will be really appreciative if maybe in the comment section, if you feel like it, you could give him a thumbs up, a good positive thought. I'm sure that he would be happy. He's going to watch this video, probably. I'm sure he would be happy to see that there are other people pulling for him to get through this load of crap that he's dealing with and out the other side. That would be wonderful of you. but I certainly want to say hello and thank you for watching my channel. Any small help that my videos can be in getting you through all this is my honor to give you. So let's look at the mail. We have a couple of periodicals and a few packages. And the periodicals are two of the foremost literary reviews in the English-speaking world, the London Review of Books and the Times Literary Supplement, the TLS. But they were great. I really enjoyed both of them, but boy, oh boy, they have some persistent thingamajigs going on in them that I didn't really like. The London Review of Books, this is the London Review of Books, and their lead-off review what is by Neil Acheson, the great Neil Acheson, who does a long and wonderful review of that new book on the revolutions of 1848 by Christopher Clark. It's called Revolutionary Spring. And Neil Acheson has nothing but the highest praise for the book. He says that Clark completed this magnificently researched, intelligent, and thrilling work. It's a massive book, nearly 900 pages long, but the scale of it allows Clark the room he needs to achieve two things. One is analysis, and the other is where the magnificence comes in narrative. Clark takes all the space he requires in order to tell us what happened at each moment of crisis as far as it can be reliably reconstructed. And he goes on from there. Of course, Acheson, he gets 2,000 words, so he has to fill you in on at least the bare bones of that revolutionary year. But he makes a really good point about the nature of that year. He says, all over Europe, the police made the mistake of assuming that the next revolutionary outbreak would be the work of a handful of trained conspirators. The explosion of almost spontaneous mass uprisings by so-called the people, which was the pattern of 1848, took governments, liberal reformers, and even Count Metternich, the supreme architect of Europe's post-1815 order, by surprise. And he takes you through Christopher Clark's handling of all that. Really, really well done. But there was another review in here. Let's get straight to it so we can see what the problem is here, because it kept coming up. It came up in the London Review, and it also came up in the TLS, as we'll see. I won't dwell at enormous length, I promise. But we get to this thing here. We saw this book on this channel, but we get to a review of David Edmonds' biography of Derek Parfit, the philosopher Derek Parfit. And Edmonds' review is weird, and it struck a note that is struck a few times in the course of the reviews that I read in both of these journals. That it touches on a point that I've talked about before on this channel when I talk about the actual craft of book reviewing, which is that one of the big mistakes that a book reviewer can make is to castigate the book under review for not being a different book. You have to at least grant the author that they get to write the book they want to write. It's your job to assess the book they've written, not to hand-wring or to scold about a book they didn't write. And the reviewer here, Stephen Mulhall, just doesn't seem to get that. He just doesn't want this biography to exist. I have a feeling, I don't actually know, let's check and see. I have a feeling that he's a philosopher. And maybe that's why, yeah, he teaches philosophy at New College, Oxford. So maybe that's the reason why. Maybe this is just a review that shouldn't have been commissioned. Maybe the editor, whoever it was who commissioned this review and got the first draft of it, instead of saying, can you fix this, this, and this, because it looks a little bit like infighting or catfighting, should instead have said, I think this is a mistake. I don't think we can actually use a review of this book from you. Now, you've already written the review, so I'll give you a kill fee, which is usually a fourth or a fifth of the agreed upon commission price of the review, but we're not going to run it. So I'm just going to kill this, and we'll move things around. We won't have a review of this the way I want. I still want to review this book, but I'm going to go to a different reviewer. I think probably at the initial stages of when this was being looked at, that should have happened. But it didn't, so this review hit the light of day, and it does David Edmonds. I hope that David Edmonds obeys my ironclad rule. You absolutely should not respond to this kind of review yourself. If you've got a factual problem with the review, if Stephen Mulhall gets facts wrong, if Stephen Mulhall says in chapter 10 of his review, paragraph 10, that David Edmonds, it's mysterious why Edmonds doesn't cover this particular aspect of Parfit's life. It's actually quite important. When the book does cover that, well, then you can definitely go to your publisher, in this case, Princeton, and say, my book does cover that. You know that. You edited it with me. Here is my documentary evidence that my book covers that. And then Princeton can write to the London Review of Books, not with a letter that is meant for publication, but rather to demand a retraction, which they would then put in the letters page of the next issue. That's a retraction for factual mistake looks bad for the reviewer. Reviewers hate it, and readers notice it. A letter from the person under review can't help but look bad for that person, regardless of whether or not they're in the right. But you get it right from the beginning. The opening paragraph here is, for David Edmonds and for many other philosophers, Derek Parfit, who died in 2017, was one of the greatest moral thinkers of the past century, perhaps even since John Stuart Mill. Edmonds rightly believes that if Parfit's ideas about personal identity, rationality, and equality were absorbed into our moral and political thinking, they would radically alter our beliefs about punishment, the distribution of social resources, our relationship to future generations, and more. It's utterly ridiculous. I'm not meaning to talk about the claims here, but rather the review. But all of this palaver about philosophy is utterly ridiculous. Parfit takes up, in his writing career, 4 or 5 ideas that would be self-evident to a 5-year-old and tortures them for the length of all of his writing career. It doesn't stop them from being self-evident. Anyway, so it's easy to see why he wants to make Parfit's ideas more widely known outside the academy. What is less easy to understand is his belief that the best or even an appropriate way of achieving this goal is to write a biography of him. So you don't want there to be a biography of this guy. You think it would be a better idea not to. I think the opening paragraph alone disqualifies the reviewer, but it goes on like that over and over. I mean, for paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, assessing Parfit's career and kind of offhandedly assessing the book. And that's not the right proportion for a review. The review is to assess the book for the reader, not to assess the subject. You definitely, on a subject like this, especially if you've got a nice, generous amount of room, you do want to assess the subject. But the ultimate purpose of a review, even a long think piece review like the London Review of Books loves to commission, is to guide the reader in whether or not they want to plunk down the money for the book. That is the ultimate purpose of the review. Not to assess the reviewer's life history or the subject's life history, but this Mulhall keeps going on like that. His ending paragraph is, sorry for the verbiage here, philosophy people, they have absolutely no idea how to write. When Kierkegaard, in his book on Adler, offers a highly critical evaluation of a Danish pastor and his claims to have experienced a revelation, he is well aware that he is taking an ethical risk in forensically displaying a living fellow citizen's soul for all to read about. But he claims that it is justified, insofar as Adler, there are 15 insofars in this one piece. Make a little note to yourself, put a sticky note on your laptop. Don't ever use the word insofar. Under any circumstances, don't ever use it. It sets you out right away as a chin-stroking, leather elbow-patched ponce. So don't ever use it. There is never a reason to use it unless you are a philosopher. But he claims that it is justified insofar as Adler is a transparency through which his age might be more deeply understood, a case study whose confusions and derangements amounted to an epigram on the Christendom of his time. Edmund's biography of Derek Parfit might have been intended as an entertaining and admiring portrait of a quirky exemplar of post-religious moral thinking, but it is also unwittingly presents its subject as an epigram on our present philosophical age, a compact, compellingly lucid expression of its own confusions and derangements. Which doesn't say anything, and is also just more of Mulhall wanting this book either to... The most usual offense here for critics is that they want the book to be a different book. What Mulhall seems to be wanting throughout the 3,000 words of this review is for this book not to exist. I wish the author hadn't written it. I think the key to it exists in the last 2/3 of the review, where Mulhall goes on and on about how he doesn't believe that the second half of Derek Parfit's career is worth reading about. That the works in that half of his career are not worth reading. That Parfit, in his perception, sort of withdrew into a cloistered ivory tower, and therefore was not participating in what Mulhall seems to think is the rough and tumble, two-fisted social engagement of philosophy just in general. That's an utterly ridiculous conception, but he seems to think there's no real good reason to talk seriously about the later part of Parfit's career, and Edmonds, of course, does. He's writing a biography of the guy. It's all just tut-tutting. There was one other weird thing in the London Review. I won't stress this too much because I don't want to get canceled and I don't want this house to be firebombed. But Emily Wilson, who is a really good classicist, she has an upcoming translation of Homer's Iliad coming out. She writes a long review of the new University of Chicago Press collected works of Epictetus, which we saw on this channel. We opened it on this channel. It's a new translation, new introduction, new notes, and whatnot. And she writes up, in this case, she also has 3,000 words, so she writes up that translation a little, but she mostly is writing about Epictetus. And because it's not the utterly vapid, gas-bagging waste of time that is philosophy, I'm perfectly happy to read Emily Wilson on Epictetus. She's terrific to read on the classics. So I was perfectly happy to do that. So that's not what I object to in this review. What I object to happens twice in the first 2 paragraphs. And it's the reason why we're seeing this article. Because she writes in the first paragraph that the Stoic philosopher Epictetus was an enslaved person. And in the second paragraph, she writes, for Epictetus, even as an enslaved person can be free. And enslaved person is the new politically correct blue checkmark Twitter fascist expression for slave. You cannot call Epictetus a slave. You must call him an enslaved person. And Emily Wilson is an extremely respected classical teacher and translator. And if she had written the word slave in this article, it would have been sent back to her. So the same editor, maybe, who was completely asleep at the wheel for a self-serving and nitpicking review of a book about Derek Parfit, very much would have sent this review back to Emily Wilson and said, change that to enslaved person everywhere it occurs in this article. Even though it's a stupid neologism that is only being insisted upon for matters of control, for fascism, for terrorists' sake. And, am I getting hot under the collar, baby? Do you want to come down here? Gives us some Frieda yoga for our day. Oh, you do. Ooh, stretch. Oh. All the way to your tippy toes. Oh, my goodness. I guess my irritated point here, it's the same thing with unhoused person. My irritated point here is that Emily Wilson's standing would not have saved her. If she had submitted this article calling Epictetus a slave, which is what he was, calling him a slave does not mean I approve of slavery or have slaves of my own. But that is definitely the terrorism behind here. But if she had submitted this article calling Epictetus a slave, despite her standing, despite the critical acclaim of her translations, if she had refused to change that to a stupid neologism to please 12 psychos on Twitter, the article wouldn't have run. And that infuriates me. That just infuriates me. Anyway, we'll move on to the next periodical, which is the TLS, and we get more of the same here, of people either wishing that the books they're reviewing hadn't been written, or wishing that the books were different. The issue starts off with a roundup review. Those are tricky to commission. They're tricky to get somebody to do. You've got to find somebody who knows what they're doing and can do 2 books justice in one piece. Editors love it when they can get them, but they're very hard to get. I used to make sure that I proposed to editors of mine that I am happy to do that, and you'll like the product. Editors love it because it lets them check off more than one book. Believe it or not, although if you're trying to break into the reviewing world, you might think of book section editors as, heartless reviewsniks, but they aren't. They bleed for every worthwhile book that they can't review. They only have so much space. And the opening review here is a roundup of 3 new books on Lord Byron, and I don't have any of them. Any of them by American publishers, Cambridge University Press, Liverpool University Press, and Reaction. So Cambridge I could probably get. That one is Byron and the Poetics of Adversity. And then there's Reading Byron and just a little book from Reaction Press on Byron. I don't have any of these. The piece was really good. The piece was really enjoyable, but it was inset in the middle of there by another Byron-related book, a review of the new biography of Lady Caroline Lamb by Antonia Fraser, which I reviewed for Big Canoe News in Northern Georgia, which is at the other end of the critical esteem spectrum from the TLS, although I'm working on it. I'm working on elevating our profile. But this review is by Emily Bernard Jackson, who read at least part of Antonia Fraser's very short biography of Lady Caroline Lamb and went in objecting to it. She went in objecting to... Antonia Fraser, in her biography, wants to take Caroline Lamb seriously as a person. The whole ethos of her project is, I don't want to write a review of Lady Caroline Lamb that merely makes her a supporting character in Lord Byron's love life. I don't want to do that. I want to write a biography about her as a person in the round on her own. Now, you might not agree with that, but that is the book you were given to review. And Emily Bernard Jackson clearly does not agree with this and just goes on reverting back to that old picture of Caroline Lamb, giving almost no critical attention to whether or not Antonia Fraser succeeds in the pages of the book that's actually supposed to be reviewed here. And we finish up with what may be an inadvertent admission. As an editor, I always look for this sort of thing. Actually, as a reader of book reviews, just in general, I always look for this sort of thing to see if you think it's a tell. The final paragraph here is, the difficulty with Byron is that once he gets in somewhere, he tends to take over. That much is absolutely true. Try writing a biography of somebody connected with Byron where he doesn't take over the narrative. Even at a distance, he was kind of disembodied charisma. This was true for Caroline Lamb. She remained obsessed with him almost until the day she died. It's also true of this biography. Although the affair is over by the midpoint, a reference to Byron appears on almost every page thereafter. As a veteran reader of reviewers, I read a sentence like that, especially having read the book, where the sense that's being given here is simply false. But when I see a sentence like that, although the affair is over by the midpoint, a reference to Byron appears on almost every page thereafter. That conjures in my mind an image. It could be false. I could be being very uncharitable. That conjures in my mind an image that the midpoint is as far as you went. Usually it's been my experience that when a reviewer mentions a particular point in a book, there's a reason for it, and it's not thematic. It's that's where they stop reading. And my suspicion there is undergirded by the fact that after that, a reference to Byron appears on almost every page after that. What does that sound like? Does that sound like someone who was reading the second half of the book, or does that sound like someone who read to the halfway point and then consulted the index? It's in the index that you would learn where Byron occurs on almost every page. I don't know that that's something that would stick to your mind if you'd been reading the second half of the book. Fraser does her best, trying to argue that Lamb was a fine novelist, in parentheses, she wasn't. Her novels were overwritten Gothic melodramas, and to make something rich of her friendship with William Godwin. That actually does succeed in the book. The reviewer says that Antonia Fraser is merely trying to do that. She actually succeeds in the William Godwin parts. Even so, the book declines into the story of a thwarted woman who ended up lonely and ill, eventually known only for her association with a man who has been the reason for her fame ever since. That isn't true. And that's not the impression you get by reading the second half of the book. Lady Caroline Lamb in Antonia Fraser's book dies happy, surrounded by loved ones and family, and relatively fulfilled in the world. It was just another example of this bit about someone reading through a book and not seeing the thing that they're reading. And I thought there was one other example in here as well. Let me see if I can find it. All right, don't get me started with this. This was not a book review. This was an art exhibit review, which I would love if I had somebody who was in a big city. If you're in a big city, if you're in Chicago, if you're in New York, you like taking in art exhibits, and you'd like to break into the world of reviewing such things, it's even more exclusive than the book reviewing world. I will gladly take your piece, and you will appear in a journal online that is well respected, has Olive on the masthead, has Britta Bola, a respected lawyer, and also a published author. It has Sam Sachs and me on the masthead, both professional reviewers. If you have a hankering to review art exhibits, and you just don't think you could ever break in, well, you might want to give me an email. You might want to send me a message. I don't have anybody at the moment who's reviewing art exhibits, but this is a review of an exhibit on the Rossettis, on the Pre-Raphaelites at the Tate. And the review is by Catherine Hughes, who's usually really good, but oh my God. Her review of this exhibit is just one, well, I don't want to say dumb, but one very easy characterization of the Pre-Raphaelites after another. It's very easy to characterize the Pre-Raphaelites. It's very easy to do a thumbnail thing of them. They're far more complex than they're usually portrayed in books, let alone in reviews, and this is a case of that. And I would love it. I'm not going to write a letter about it to the TLS. I would love it if somebody wrote in and called her on this gently, in a friendly way. It's not no offense is being done here. This is not a war, but the Pre-Raphaelites deserve better than she gives them in the review of this installment, and that leads me to think just naturally that the installment probably deserves better than she gives it. But the problem of expecting anybody to, if I don't write that letter, the problem with expecting anybody else to do it is that nobody cares about the Pre-Raphaelites, so probably not. This particular issue of the TLS had a symposium feature where they send out little questionnaires to all of their regular writers. And I read the description of it here. Writers at the Hay Festival consider what art and literature can be or do in times of tension, conflict, and destruction. I read that description, and I practically wanted to take 50 bottles of Ambutol and just end it all. Because this is going to be one writer after another tossing off bromides about the role of art in life. And that's exactly what it is. It goes on for, 3 pages, 4 pages, and it's disastrous. Just absolutely disastrous. Or as horrible as that description makes it sound. But there's also a review here by Jason Sokol of Jonathan Eig's new biography of Martin Luther King. And once again, the review is castigating that the book even exists and wishing that the author had written something different. In this case, a biography of Coretta Scott King. Which the thing ends with, Eig's most original contribution lies in his portrayal of Coretta Scott King, whom he incorporates to a degree unmatched by previous biographers. A, that is not true. Coretta Scott King gets an enormous amount of attention in Taylor Branch's 3-volume biography of King. And B, it's not the most important thing, or what was the word? Original contribution in the book. Not at all. But he ends this piece by saying, to read Jonathan Eig's many pages on Coretta Scott King is to have one's eyes opened. It is also to recognize that she is the person most deserving of a new biography. Do we really need another book on King? Certainly we do, if the King in question is Coretta. Again, I'm not really jabbing Jonathan Sokol here because he's just a freelancer. I'm a freelancer, but I also deal with freelancers, and the responsibility here is the editor. The editor should have read this thing and said, how about you concentrate on the book that's in front of you, not the book you wish it were. But there's also the thing that absolutely redeems this whole issue. In fact, I thought it was glowingly good, even though I completely disagree with it. Let's get to it and show you. Alan Jenkins' meditation on Martin Amis, which is nice and generously long, and I thought it was absolutely wonderful. Just absolutely wonderful. So heartfelt, so almost brought a tear to my eye. Even though it's completely wrong. It's just completely wrong about what Amis is doing on the page as a novelist. Where is the most outrageous claim here? From the moment the Rachel Papers was published in 1973, Martin found himself in the news, and for most of his writing life he stayed there, albeit often for the wrong reasons. Reasons that had nothing to do with the extraordinary things he was doing with English prose, with the English novel, and seemingly everything to do with his upbringing, his personal life, his teeth. Mostly, though, with the envy of journalists and a couple of younger novelists. One of the cruelest ironies of his career, it seems to me, was that he was regularly saluted, even exalted by reviewers, by what was left of the literary criticism he had once believed in. It's still doing just fine, Alan. Thanks very much. Okay? It's not that the critics were too small for Martin Amis. All right? But anyway, for his style, at the same time as he was castigated in the last decades of the 20th century, for poor plotting, for unconvincing or unlikable characters, for his misanthropy, his cruelty, as if style was something he added on after the hard graft had been done and, in these estimations, had fallen short. And perhaps it really is so with some novelists, but Martin's talent wasn't like that at all. Those reviewers had made the most basic category error. His style was his vision, or rather that vision expanded, deepened, and darkened to look on life sentence by sentence. No, Alan, the critics didn't one and all, man and boy, from snout to tail, misunderstand Martin Amis, okay? I don't know how well you have surveyed the list of people who have criticized Amis's novels over the decades. But there aren't many pikers on that list, and I don't know how much of that criticism you've read. You're his friend. You're entitled to defend him, but please, you can defend him without saying that the entire critical industry was wrong about his prose. And also, what is that parenthetical insertion there? That he was castigated for poor plotting, poor, unconvincing or unlikable characters, for his misanthropy, for his cruelty. I notice you leave sexism out. You leave sexism off the list, but that's okay. But in the middle of that, you say that he was castigated for this in the last decade of the 20th century, with an exclamation point. Like somehow it's extra embarrassing to even bring up ideas of plot or pacing or characters in the last decade of the 20th century. When did we outgrow those things being important? Alan, did I miss that memo? What, by the last decade of the 20th century, it was incredibly recherché to even bring up whether or not the novelist is actually writing a good novel? I didn't notice that change. I don't think that change happened. But it was incredibly touching anyway. I absolutely loved it. But it occurs to me that we're at 30 minutes and we haven't touched any of the mail yet. So let's look at the mail. You knew this when you married me. I get these reviews in the mail and I grab at them. I grapple at them. It's my profession. On a very, very small scale, I am doing the same thing. So anyway. Let's look at the packages here. In the meantime, while I've been ranting, the bean has descended from her perch and is right next to me. So that's going to make disposing of these things a little bit tricky, but we'll manage. Oh, fantastic. Okay. All right, this comes out in mid-November. Oh, it's a skimpy little thing. Jeez Louise. It's less than 200 pages. Okay, well, I've been looking for this. This comes out in November. This is by Benjamin Taylor, and it's called Chasing Bright Medusas, A Life of Willa Cather. I am hoping on some deep, fugitive level in some fantasy land, I am hoping that I get the honor at Open Letters Review of running a review of this book by Hannah at Hannah's Books. I'm hoping for that. It might not happen. There are all sorts of bridges to hurdle before then. We don't have a pub sheet for this, but let's just read the back of it. A brief and tender biography of one of the greatest authors of the 20th century. The story of Willa Cather is defined by a lifetime of determination, struggle, and gradual emergence. Some show their full powers early, yet Cather was the opposite. She took her time and transformed herself by stages. The writer who leapt into the forefront of American letters with O Pioneers in 1913, Song of the Lark in 1915, I'm due for a reread of Song of the Lark, and My Antonina in 1918, was already well into middle age. Through years of provincial journalism in Nebraska, brief spells of teaching and editorial work on magazines, is there a collection out there somewhere? One of you would probably know better than I would. Is there a collection out there from some Midwest academic press of collecting as much of Willa Cather's deadline prose as can be found? I've never seen that collection. I'd really love to see it. She persevered in pursuit of the ultimate goal, literary immortality. Unlike Hemingway, Faulkner, and Fitzgerald, her idealism was unironic, and she stood alone among the great modern authors, at odds with the time in which she lived. heaping helpings of irony in Fitzgerald. I'm not quite sure. I know I'll have to read the book to see what's going on there. I am sure that this back copy, it's not always true, but I am sure that this back copy was written by Benjamin Taylor, or heavily coached by him. Combining intricate analysis with an empathetic, lyrical voice, Benjamin Taylor uncovers the reality of Cather's artistic development, from modest beginnings to the triumphs of her mature years. The book is simultaneously an homage to her character, a warm consideration of her work, and a case being made to read Cather with renewed vigor. Okay, well, I'm totally on board with this. I will read it long before November, but I have a dream reviewer in mind for this thing. I'm going to put it down here because the baby has gone to sleep. She's sound asleep. She gave you some Frieda yoga. She dislodged the sheet. She rummaged around a little, and now she's gone sound asleep. I don't want to disturb her. So let's do this next one. See what this is. Be very. I've got to rip open a box, so I'm going to disturb her anyway. Oh, great. Fantastic. Okay. Fantastic. This is the finished copy of Killingly. We've already seen this. By Catherine Buettner. And this is her first novel in over a decade. This is her first novel since her book Alcestis in 2010. And Alcestis was right at the beginning of what has become an epidemic, a tsunami of myth retellings. But Alcestis is incredible. Just an amazing, elegant book. Let's see here. This thing has a twisty plot, lush period detail, and a creepy Victorian medical science. So what is this? Let's see here. Bertha Mellish, the most peculiar, quiet, reserved girl at Mount Holyoke College, is missing. One cold November morning, the junior is spotted walking through the Massachusetts woods. Then she vanishes. As a search team dredges the pond where she might have drowned, Bertha's panicked father and sister arrive at the campus, desperate to find some clues as to her fate or state of mind. Her best friend, Agnes, a scholarly loner studying medicine, might know the truth, but she's being unhelpfully tight-lipped, inciting the suspicion of Bertha's family, her classmates, and the private investigator hired by the Mellish family doctor. As secrets from Agnes and Bertha's lives come to light, so do the competing agendas driving each person who is searching for Bertha. Where did she go? Who would want to hurt her? Could she still be alive? Now, I have the advanced copy of this, and I haven't read it. This comes out on June 6th, so this is out today. Despite the fact how much I loved Alcestis, I haven't read this book yet. But judging from Alcestis, I'm going to guess that Bertha and Agnes were lovers, and that is the secret being haunted here. But we shall see. This author's credit in the Bank of Steve could not be any higher. So I'll put this on the list and read this tonight. But I have a feeling, we're at the box now, and I have a feeling that the box is going to account for at least a chunk of tonight's reading. So let's see how gently we can do this. We don't want to bother the baby any more than we can help it. What is going on here? All right. Oh no. Oh no. Is there some sort of message here that I'm destroying? Oh, there is. Oh my. Oh goodness gracious. Maybe not. All right. Well, let's just open the book. I can deal with the innards later, and I did indeed wake up Her Highness. I did indeed wake you up, baby. Sorry. All right, but that at least frees me to rummage through this like a wild raccoon. So let's see. Ooh! I knew this was coming. This is a gift from someone who went on a mission for me. I cannot thank you enough. There's a rule on this channel. Rule number 1 is don't send me books. I know what I want, and I want what I know, and I know how to get it. But there are exceptions. If I ask you to go to a library sale or something because I have a specific thing in mind and you're willing to do that and then ship me the proceeds, I'll gladly take them. And this is a box full of Regency romances. I like romance reading, but I love Regency romances. And oh my God, look at all of these things. All right, so we're going to go through all of these. I don't care how long this video is. This is by Mary Butler. This is a Regency romance, but this is from Warner Books. This is not a Signet Regency romance. This is The Gallant Heiress. He's taken a tumble. Tiny matchstick legs like those, I don't doubt it. Then this is a Zebra Regency. So again, not a Signet Regency, but I know this thing will have signets in it. This is Mary Blanley. This is The Pleasure of His Company. Are they ballooning? Goodness gracious. All right. Oh, okay. Here we have a Signet Regency romance. This is Cassandra's Deception by Gail Buck. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know how many of these I have. I'll have to check and see. But oh my, there's a whole box. This is great. Oh, so okay, we go to Harlequin Regencies. Harlequin, I guess, had a line. I'll have to ask Sarah at the Bookish Knitter. I guess once upon a time they had a dedicated Regency line. 1991. This is by Barbara Neal, and it is Lucy's Scoundrel. Let's keep going here. We won't dwell too long. The next one is a Zebra Regency romance. This is Valerie King, Rogue's Wager. Archery is usually a ubiquitous theme on the covers of these things. I hear sirens in the distance. It sounds like 50 cars, so if they come this way, I might have to stop. Then we have another Zebra Regency romance. I have nothing against Zebra Regency romances. The signets tend to have pleased me the most over time, but I've liked a lot of Zebras. This is by Irene Lloyd Black, and it is A Determined Lady. He's sticking his chin out there somewhere. Let's see this next one here. I can't believe you sent this. Thank you so much. Another Zebra in perfect condition. Oh, zoop, zoop, zoop. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, oh. I guess there are humans on the cover as well. This is by Patricia Bray. This is a most suitable Duchess, but who cares? It's got beagles on the cover. It's nothing personal, baby. You are much cuter than any beagle could ever be. This next one's big. Oh, this is a modern thing. This is Joan Aiken, A 5-Minute Marriage. Bigger thing. Regents is still alive, very alive and well, but they're no longer these little formulaic category things. They're bigger and more opulent. Big Zebra Regency romance, The Unwilling Bride by Joe Beverly, who's terrific. Fantastic. Baby, I'm gonna have to put these in front of your little snout. Sorry. We have another Zebra. This is An Elusive Guardian by Sarah Blaine. He's in a fancy dress, or maybe he actually is a pirate, and he's got an eye patch. This is a little older. This is Coventry Romances from Fawcett. The Lydiard Beauty by Audrey Blanchard. Don't think I've ever read anything with that kind of... okay, this is another Harlequin Regency. This is also from the 1990s. Harlequin 2001. So Harlequin must have had a row of Regency. This is A Kind and Decent Man by Mary Brendan. Wow, I'm going to have to ask Sarah about these. I don't recall ever seeing them in the bookstore. Okay, now we have another big new Regency. This is by Amanda Forrester. This is If the Earl Only Knew. Nice big lush thing here. Don't let those fall on you, baby. What else have we got? Oh, what an odd cover. Okay, this is an Avon Regency romance. A very strange cover. This is Miss Gabriel's Gambit by Rita Boucher. The couple's way in the distance there, and it's painted. It's very impressionistic. How interesting. Another Harlequin Regency romance. This is Scandal and Miss Smith by Julia Byrne, who I think I know. I think I like this author. Like I said, these are going to blur together for me. Oh, lots of Zebra Regencies. That's great. This is another Mary Blaley. This is His Last Love. It's got a sticker on it, but I'll take care of that. Here we go. He looks very skeptical. Let's see here. Let's keep going. Look at all these things. Okay, this is a big Zebra holiday thing. This is an anthology, so it's a mother's love, and it's got a bunch of authors there. Any that I know: Sarah Blaine again, Melissa Lynn Jones, Nina Porter, Teresa Desjardins, who's done quite a few Signet Regency romances, Valerie King, and Mary Kingsley. Okay, all right, let's keep going. We have another Harlequin Regency romance. This is by Lucy Muir. This is The Imprudent Wager. Okay, we have another big modern one. This is Earl Interrupted, another one by Amanda Forrester. Nice big thing here. Well loved. Oh, here's a Signet Regency romance. This is A Chance Encounter by Emily Hendrickson. I have this one. The only reason I remember is because of the dog, but I do. But that's all right. Doubles are bound to happen here. We have a Signet Regency romance, Gail Buck. This is Miss Dower's Paragon. There they are out and about. Is that an archery butt in the background? Maybe? Sorry, baby, I'm burying you in these things. So my little baby's getting buried. Then we go back to a Zebra. This is The Irish Earl by Patricia Bray. She's wearing a bright blue dress, and there's Jason Harrigan on her arm. Let's see here. A Signet Regency romance. This is April Kilstrom. This is Miss Tibbles Investigates. Pretty sure that I already have this one, but not in this kind of shape. This is brand new. Let's see. A Harlequin Regency romance. This is The Art of the Hunt by Cora Hoyle. Somebody has reinforced the hell out of this. Good Lord. Oh, the library did. A library did. So they just wrapped it all around in thick packing tape. Let's see here. Signet Regency Romance. This is The Indifferent Earl by Blair Bancroft. I don't think I have this one. I don't think so. That is fantastic. Oh my, I'm going to need to make room for these things. We have Zebra Regency Romance, A Noble Heart by Sarah Blaine. So we're getting a lot of Sarah Blaines here. I don't know her off the top of my head. We have Signet Regency Romance. This is Gail Buck. This is Mutual Consent. There we go. A classic Regency. We have another Signet Regency Romance. This is another Gail Buck. This is Lord Darlington's Darling. I know I have this, but again, not in this kind of shape. Let's see here. What's this next one? A Zebra Regency Romance. This is Nobleman's Bride by Sarah Blaine. So I'm getting the complete works of Sarah Blaine. There's a ship at sea there. Nautical Edge there. We're almost at the end here. Don't you worry. We'll get to 45 minutes. Then we've got another Harlequin Regency Romance. I'm going to have to ask Sarah about this. Was this a... it must have been a regular line. There's plenty of things here. I don't remember these, though. This is by Beth Bryan, and it is What Lucinda Learned. And then finally we have... is that the last one? Yes. We'll end with a Zebra Regency Romance. This is Miss Seaton's Sonata by Meredith Bond, where they are both at the piano. Oh, how incredible. All right, well, there's no possibility of a Steve Pyramid here because I've got 30 books to deal with here, but this is how amazingly generous of the one person. I hope you're watching. I am incredibly pleased. How amazing. I now have to figure out where these things are going to go because I've got a whole new collection to read, but I was correct. Several of these will be on the reading docket for tonight. So I might do the Willa Cather book tonight too. So, but the night's only got so many hours in it, right? I've got to read a Star Trek novel. I've got to read a Western. But I don't know. It's long since... I mean, today is publication day for Killing Me. I should have done that already, so I'll get to it. So there you go. That's a big, fat, chatty, mail haul, gift-type periodical review. Good Lord. Anyway, I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.